This is lecture 6, and it's on sex differences in personality. And so the first thing that you should be aware of, this is the reason I put it in after neuroticism and agreeableness, is that the biggest differences in temperament, personality, between men and women are in agreeableness and neuroticism. And that seems to be true cross-culturally. And so, because one of the things you want to know is, so look what's happened, is that psychologists have established a relatively atheoretical model of personality. And I don't believe that there was any bias built into it, or at least that the bias was minimized by the method, because the method was ask people as many questions as you possibly can and use statistical methods by multiple teams to sort out the relationships between the answers. And I thought the Big Five was a pretty ugly theory when I first came across it. It wasn't one that I warmed up too quickly. I would say it probably took between 5 and 10 years before I was convinced by the brute power of the analysis that it had to be taken seriously. And as that happened, because the theory was first laid out only linguistically and statistically, there was no neuropsychology, there was no neurobiology, there was no real theory, there was no developmental theory, it was just lexical description. And so it was like a theory in search of a place to exist as well, because of course before it was established we didn't know what it was also capable of predicting. And that all got built up around that, say, 5 to 10 year period too. And it became more, as we started to understand the relationship between the descriptors and the underlying biology, then the theory became richer and more useful and also more credible. But that actually had certain benefits. Its lack of initial theoretical attractiveness, because it also mitigated against bias, because if you find a theory attractive for whatever reason, then you're more likely to maybe be biased in favor of evidence that support it. And I really don't believe that the people who developed the Big Five theory were very much affected by that. I mean, there are people who built their reputation on the theory, and of course they would be biased in favor of pushing their career forward, but peer review, when it's done properly, keeps that nicely under control. And then the fact that multiple different methods have converged on the same model, and that there's pretty good evidence that it remains, reasonably stable cross-culturally, and that it's associated with the child developmental literature. That's all pretty powerful convergent evidence. And so, well, once you have the theory laid out, you can start to use it to ask and answer interesting questions like, well, are there differences between men and women?